You ever notice how some people move through life quietly, always apologizing for being here? They say sorry when someone bumps into them. They shrink when they speak, trying to take up less space than they deserve. And if you listen closely, not just to their words, but the pauses in between, you can hear it. That faint echo of a childhood that didn't feel like love. Not being loved as a child doesn't always look traumatic. It doesn't always mean cruelty or neglect. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a mother who was too busy, a father too tired, or a home that felt emotionally cold, even if it was physically safe. Growing up in that world, the lesson seeps in slowly. I guess I'm not worth the warmth. What's wild is how long that message stays. Psychology calls it attachment theory, the blueprint your brain builds for every relationship that follows. If love wasn't safe back then, your nervous system remembers. So when someone loves you now, part of you flinches. You wait for it to end. You test it, sabotage it, or quietly assume it's a mistake. Not because you want to ruin it, but because deep down you still believe you don't deserve it. That's what childhood emotional deprivation does. It doesn't just hurt you once. It rewires how you expect the world to treat you. Most people never realize that's what's happening. They just think they're bad at relationships or too independent. But independence born from survival isn't freedom, it's armor. You learned early that needing people gets you hurt, so you stop needing. You become self-sufficient, the caretaker, the problem solver. You take pride in being low maintenance, but the truth is, you're protecting the child inside who once reached out and got nothing back. Some call it emotional neglect, but that sounds too clinical for something so human. What it really feels like is standing outside a warm house in winter, pressing your hand to the glass while everyone else seems to belong inside. You tell yourself you don't need it, that you're fine in the cold. But some nights you feel it, that quiet ache, that longing you can't name. If you grew up without love, you probably became really good at reading the room. Hyper-aware of moods, facial expressions, tone shifts, because when you're little, love isn't just affection, it's survival. You learn to sense danger, rejection, disappointment before it happened. Your nervous system became a radar for disconnection. It's a useful skill, until it's not, because now, even in adulthood, that radar fires when nothing's wrong. Someone texts okay, and your brain reads it as anger. A friend takes longer to reply, and you feel abandoned. It's not drama, it's programming. Neuroscience shows the brain of a neglected child develops differently. Areas tied to emotional regulation and self-worth light up in ways that show chronic stress. Your brain learns to expect rejection and builds defenses before it arrives. You grow up learning how to protect yourself from pain, but never how to receive love without suspicion. And here's the paradox. Those who were unloved often become the most loving adults. They know what it's like to go without, so they overgive, overcompensate, overextend, trying to create for others what they never had. It's beautiful in one way, tragic in another, because they often give so much there's nothing left for themselves. Let me tell you something real. The hardest part of healing from an unloved childhood isn't forgiving your parents. It's forgiving yourself for the years you believed it was your fault, for chasing people who couldn't love you, for abandoning yourself just to feel wanted. But you weren't broken, you were adapting. Children don't stop loving their parents to survive, they stop loving themselves. Think about that. You were born to seek warmth, comfort, connection. When it wasn't given, your mind made a new rule. I must be the reason. That's how you stayed safe, by blaming yourself, instead of facing the unbearable truth that maybe love wasn't guaranteed. That rule doesn't vanish when you grow up. It hides in your achievements, your relationships, your work ethic. You chase approval like it's oxygen. You learn love has to be earned, so you perform for it. You succeed, you please, you impress, but deep down, the goal isn't success, it's belonging. You tell yourself you're ambitious, but sometimes that drive is a disguised ache. You're not trying to reach the top, you're trying to be enough. It shows up everywhere, in the way you overthink every text, how compliments make you uncomfortable, how you downplay your pain, saying it's fine when it's not. You wear a calm face, even when you're falling apart inside, because that's what kept you safe back then. Hiding the need for love you didn't believe you could have. But that emptiness you feel isn't proof you're unlovable, it's proof you were wired for love and something essential was missing. That ache isn't weakness. It's your body reminding you what you deserve. The human brain depends on love for development. Studies from Harvard show emotional attunement, eye contact, soothing affection shape neural pathways that regulate self-esteem and empathy. Without it, the brain stays on chronic alert, always waiting for rejection, even when none comes. So when you say, "I don't trust easily," or "I don't get attached," it's not personality, it's defense. You built walls because your early world taught you love was unpredictable. But healing doesn't mean tearing those walls down overnight. It means understanding why they're there, and slowly teaching your nervous system that love can be safe. It starts small, practicing receiving without guilt, allowing kindness without assuming strings attached, letting silence exist without panicking. It means rejection. That's how rewiring begins, one safe moment at a time. It's okay if it feels uncomfortable. Love can feel dangerous when you've never known secure love. Intimacy can feel like exposure. But over time, safe experiences overwrite the old scripts. You realize love isn't earned, it's remembered. It's not something you chase, it's something you return to inside yourself. The love you missed as a child isn't gone, it just never got expressed. When you begin to offer it inward, everything shifts. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as someone who survived by adapting. You stop chasing validation and start noticing peace. You stop asking, "Why didn't they love me?" and start asking, "Why did I believe that made me unworthy?" That question, painful as it is, marks the beginning of real freedom. Something inside softens. The war you've been fighting against yourself quiets down. You realize your whole personality wasn't really you, it was a map your younger self drew to. Survive a world that didn't know how to love you properly. The perfectionism, the overthinking, the scanning for rejection, all of it made sense back then. But now it's safe to outgrow it. Healing doesn't happen through logic. It happens through small moments that convince your nervous system it's finally allowed to rest. Someone listens without interrupting. A friend remembers something you said weeks ago. You comfort yourself instead of criticizing. Your body slowly begins to trust the world again. It's not dramatic or fast healing, almost never is. But every time you experience love that doesn't require you to earn it, a part of you comes home. For some, this starts in therapy. For others, it starts on quiet nights when they stop running from their own feelings. Sometimes it's as simple as looking at an old photo of yourself as a kid and whispering, "You didn't deserve that. You deserved more." That's not weakness, that's repairing. It's giving yourself what you should have received: patience, understanding, safety. You realize you can be both the wounded child and the adult capable of healing that child. Yes, it's hard. The first thing you'll notice is how deep the habits go. You'll want to apologize for taking up space. You'll minimize your pain. You'll doubt your memories. That's all part of the rewiring. Every time you choose kindness over self-criticism, you're rewriting the original story. Psychologically, that's how change happens. When consistent emotional attunement was missing early on, you must create it consciously later. It's called earned security, proven in attachment research. Even if you grew up disconnected, you can still form secure bonds as an adult through awareness, practice, and compassion. Once that happens, life starts feeling different. You no longer chase people who treat you like a backup plan. You stop mistaking chaos for connection. You stop confusing being needed with being loved. You start valuing peace over performance, stillness over validation. It's strange when your childhood was wired for emotional unpredictability. Calm feels foreign. Your brain might even stir up drama just to feel normal again. But when you recognize that impulse, you can gently tell yourself, this stillness isn't emptiness. It's safety. That's how self-trust begins. You notice your worth isn't determined by who stays or leaves. You stop negotiating your value for attention. You stop over-explaining why you deserve kindness, because the truth is, you always did. Some people realize this late in life. After decades chasing love through achievements, partners, status, one quiet evening it hits them. They were never chasing love. They were chasing proof they were lovable. That realization is both painful and freeing. Painful for the years spent trying to earn what should have been given freely. Freeing, because now you can finally stop running. You start seeing love not as something you get from others, but as something that flows through you when you stop blocking it. You understand the people who couldn't love you were repeating their own unloved patterns, not to excuse it, but to see it clearly. Forgiveness becomes less about them and more about your own freedom. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come. You stop replaying the what-ifs. You stop needing closure from people who couldn't open emotionally in the first place. You give yourself closure by deciding your worth is no longer up for debate. That's the quiet miracle of healing. You become the person you needed when you were young. You create a life that feels safe enough to stay in. A fascinating study from the University of Minnesota followed children from infancy into adulthood. Those who experience consistent emotional presence early on formed healthier relationships and greater emotional stability decades later. But here's the hopeful part. Adults who didn't have that, but later found reliable, nurturing relationships showed the same benefits. The brain remains plastic, capable of change, no matter how deep the scars run. You're not doomed by your past. You're simply carrying a map that needs updating. Maybe that's what growing up really is, not just aging, but gently replacing survival maps with maps of safety. You start rewriting the messages you learned as a child. I am too much becomes I am allowed to exist fully. I have to earn love becomes love is my birthright. If I show my true self, I'll be abandoned becomes the right people will stay for who I really am. These rewrites aren't affirmations, they're acts of rebellion against your past. Healing from not being loved as a child isn't about pretending it didn't matter. It's about accepting that it did and still choosing to love anyway. Maybe that's the quiet superpower of those who grew up unloved. They understand the absence of warmth so deeply that when they finally find or create it, they treat it as sacred. They love harder, listen longer, hold space wider because they know what it's like to go without. So if that's you, if you recognize yourself in this story, please understand, you are not broken for craving love so deeply. That craving is the most human part of you. It means your heart still remembers what it was made for. You were born to connect. You were wired for belonging. The fact that you can still love after all of it is proof that nothing truly took that away from you. The child inside you never stopped hoping that one day someone would see them fully and not turn away. And maybe, finally, that person can be you.